Recently, my youngest daughter has become a little obsessed with the end of life. The other day, she told me, "I want to stay little forever, Dad." When I asked why, she said, "Well, if we don't get older, then you'll always be around." And I paused and I tried to think of an answer that would be honest, but that would also make sense to a 5-year-old. Finally, I said, "Daddy's planning to be around for a long time, but I also look forward to seeing the grown-up woman that you'll eventually become." And as I said these words, I understood that this wasn't really a satisfactory explanation of aging or death. But at the moment, it felt like the only answer that could meet her where she was at. Developmental psychologists have long observed something about children that almost any parent in the room already knows. Children want to make sense of the world. The Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget famously described children as constructing mental models to explain everything they encounter. More recently, cognitive scientist Alison Gopnik described children as little scientists, constantly forming theories about why things happen. But because their cognitive tools are still developing, those theories are often simplistic, sometimes beautifully so. When something confusing happens, children search for a single story that will make the world feel coherent again. And so, we adults help them along. We offer incomplete explanations, partial truths that are simple enough to hold their anxiety at bay and keep their world in one piece. But the truth is, as adults, we're hardly any different. Our world is bewildering. Wars erupt, economies rise and fall, communities struggle with crime, housing, inequality, climate, migration, and many more complex, harrowing challenges. And so, just like our children, we search for someone or something that promises a simple answer. This is precisely what our forebears do when they face a moment of terrifying uncertainty in this week's Torah portion, Parshat Ki Tisa. Moses, the man they had followed into the desert. Moses, the man who had promised them freedom. Moses, the man who could speak to the invisible, unknowable God, ascends Mount Sinai, and he doesn't come back. At least, not when he said he would. Days pass, then more days. The mountain remains shrouded in cloud, and the people begin to panic. They turn to Aaron, Moses' brother, and say, "Make us a god that shall go before us, for that fellow Moses, the man who brought us from Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him." We don't know. That's their crisis. The Israelites aren't rejecting God. They're not renouncing their covenant. No, they simply want an answer, a simple answer to a complex question. Where is the God who's supposed to lead them to safety? And Aaron obliges, gathering their gold and fashioning a calf. Now, there is something they can see with their own eyes, something they can point to, something that reassures them that God remains present with them. But the Israelites soon discover that their quick fix isn't really a fix at all. The golden calf provides neither the certainty nor the reassurance that they seek. Instead, their simple solution creates deeper problems, rupturing their relationship with God and threatening their very survival. 3,000 years later, the temptation to seek out simple answers hasn't faded. Every generation faces crises that resist simple explanations, and yet simple explanations are always available. 23 years ago, I watched firsthand as the United States declared war on Iraq, convinced that removing a single cruel and murderous dictator would bring freedom and security to the Middle East. It didn't. Last week, the United States again initiated war in the Middle East, this time against Iran. And we earnestly pray that this war will ultimately resolve the threats posed by Iran's nuclear capabilities and its terrorist network, bringing long-sought stability and peace to the region. And yet, we also know that this situation cannot be reduced to a single person or a simple solution. Local and global politics, weapons systems, manufacturing cycles, energy strategy, military strategy, religion, and more will play a role in determining the outcome of this war and the fate of the Middle East. Why? Because war is complicated. And we can say the same about countless facets of our everyday lives, from the global to the individual. Crime, traffic, inflation, climate change, all complex issues requiring complex solutions. So too are the problems we face in our workplaces, our families, and our relationships. And yet, how often do we find ourselves drawn to the hollow promise of easy answers to these profoundly difficult issues? But that is when we must realize that we are being drawn into the idolatry of our ancestors. The allure of the golden calf is its promise of immediacy and simplicity. It assures us that we don't need to tolerate uncertainty, that we don't need to do the slow and steady work of growth and repair. Just do this one easy thing, and the problem will be solved. When our work feels stagnant or draining, we might tell ourselves that a different job will make everything fall into place. A new workplace will restore our sense of purpose. A new boss will unlock our potential. A new title will finally make us feel valued. Or when we get stuck in a rut, we might tell ourselves that the answer is geographic. If we could just get somewhere else, another city, another community, then things would finally feel right. Or when our children struggle, we might tell ourselves that they just need one change, a different teacher, a different school, a different activity in order to finally thrive. In each case, we reach for what feels like a single lever, a decisive action that will make a complicated system suddenly behave. We search for our golden calf, a simple solution that promises immediate resolution. Sometimes, such changes can help. But often we discover that the deeper work in our careers, in our families, and in our own inner lives is slower and more layered than we had hoped. Our ancestors learned this lesson the hard way. But we don't have to. Instead, we can acknowledge that we, like our children, just want the world to make sense. And that we, like our ancestors, feel the need to know that everything is going to be all right. We don't need to abandon that instinct. We just need to refine it. to keep the child's desire to understand the world, but to let go of a child's expectation that the answers are always going to be simple. To seek out and embrace perspectives and ideas that thwart our search for a solitary narrative. To resist the easy allure of simple answers to complex problems, whether they're offered by our leaders, our heroes, our loved ones, or by us. And to trust that truth, just like our relationship with God, emerges not from quick certainty, but from the courage to live patiently with complexity. May this be the enduring lesson we take from our ancestors' folly and the blessing we bequeath our family members, our communities, our nation, and our world. Shabbat Shalom.